I'll bet $1 million this maid's son can't last 5 moves against me. $1 million!
100 guests laughed. Richard Hargrove slammed a check on the table. Wesley Carter, 18, black, son of the woman who scrubs this man's toilets. He sat down.
It just sat down and I can already smell the stink of losing on it.
You sure that smell isn't your opening game, Mr. Hargrove?
The room went quiet. Hargrove's smile disappeared.
What did you just say to me, boy?
I said I'll take that bet.
Hargrove smiled.
All right, but when you lose, your mama gets on her knees and polishes every piece on this board with her bare hands. Tonight.
Wesley placed a finger on his pawn. No fear. What nobody in that ballroom knew, this young man hadn't lost a single chess game in 4 years. But before we get to that night, before the $1 million check, the chessboard, and the moment that changed everything, you need to understand how Wesley Carter and Richard Hargrove III ended up on opposite sides of that table. Because this story didn't start in a ballroom. It started with 2 mornings that couldn't be more different. 5:15 a.m. A 1-bedroom apartment in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Wesley's alarm goes off. Not a phone, an old battery-powered clock with a crack across the face. The apartment is small, clean but small. A bus schedule is taped to the fridge. Next to it, chess puzzles printed from the public library. 6 pages, each one covered in Wesley's handwritten notes. His shoes are lined up by the door. 1 pair for school, 1 pair for tournaments, both held together with patience. Wesley sits at the kitchen table. No TV, no music. Just a magnetic chess set, missing a queen, and a battered copy of Bobby Fischer's My 60 Memorable Games. He replays positions before breakfast the way other guys scroll their phones. This is his routine, every single morning. Lorraine is already gone. She left at 4:45. 3 cleaning jobs. The Hargrove estate is the first. She irons tablecloths in a house where she's never been invited to sit down. She enters through the service door, removes her shoes at the entrance. One time, she wore the wrong pair, black sneakers instead of the plain white flats the staff was told to wear, and the house manager said, "The floors remember, Lorraine." She never made that mistake again. Now let's look at the other morning, 7 miles away, the Hargrove estate. 6 bedrooms, 4 acres, a swimming pool that gets cleaned more often than it gets used. Richard Hargrove III wakes up at 7:30 to fresh coffee and the Wall Street Journal on his nightstand. A man whose biggest daily decision is which watch to wear. Lorraine is already downstairs, pressing napkins into perfect triangles for a breakfast Hargrove will barely touch. That's the distance between these 2 lives. 7 miles on a map. A universe in every other way. Now, Wesley at school. East Side Public. Metal detectors at the front door. Lockers that don't lock. Wesley is in his senior year. 18, almost done, counting down the weeks until graduation. He moves through the hallways like a ghost. Not bullied, just unseen. The kind of student teachers forget to call on. He eats lunch alone in the back corner of the cafeteria, replaying chess positions from his book, while other students throw fries and argue about video games. One afternoon, his math teacher, Mrs. Patterson, noticed him solving a chess puzzle instead of doing his worksheet. She leaned over his shoulder. "That's a Sicilian defense. You play?" Wesley nodded. "You should try out for the school team." "We don't have one." Mrs. Patterson paused, looked at this young man, quiet, polite, invisible, and didn't know what to say. So she said nothing, and Wesley went back to his puzzle. On his backpack, There's a small enamel pin, a black knight. Most people think it's decoration. It's not. Mr. Okafor gave it to him 6 years ago, after his first tournament win. Okafor said, "A knight moves like no other piece. Unexpected direction." That's you, Wesley. That pin hasn't left the backpack since. Remember it. It shows up again later. Now, Hargrove. Same afternoon. Corner office, 42nd floor, Manhattan. Glass walls, a view that says, "I own this city." Hargrove is on the phone bragging to a business partner about his annual charity chess event, the Hargrove Invitational. "It's going to be the best one yet. I've got a Grand Master coming for commentary. ESPN connection, the whole thing." He hangs up, opens his phone, plays a quick blitz game against a low-rated bot, wins in 12 moves, smiles to himself. On his office wall, framed photos of himself shaking hands with chess grandmasters at previous galas. Hargrove at a chessboard, Hargrove holding a trophy, Hargrove with his arm around a world champion who looks like he'd rather be anywhere else. He tells his assistant, "Chess is the ultimate proof of intelligence. You can't fake it." Remember those words. They come back to haunt him. Hargrove collects rare chess sets the way other billionaires collect cars. A $200,000 ivory set, a Civil War edition, a set carved from a single piece of black walnut. He doesn't play well, maybe a 1,400 club rating, which sounds impressive until you realize any serious 18-year-old could beat him. But Hargrove doesn't know that. He's never played anyone who wasn't trying to lose to him on purpose. Back at the estate, late afternoon, Lorraine receives instructions for the gala from the house manager. 60 guests confirmed. Catering, flowers, security. She nods, writes everything down. Hargrove walks through the room, doesn't look at her, doesn't say hello. His assistant turns to Lorraine and says, "Your boy, he needs to stay in the service kitchen during the event. Out of sight." Your boy. Not Wesley. Not even your son. Just your boy. Lorraine nods. She's heard worse. That evening, she packs Wesley's backpack for the night, tucks a granola bar into his jacket pocket, straightens his collar. The one good shirt she irons every Sunday, even though nobody at the party will ever see him. She whispers, "I know it's boring, baby. Just a few hours. Read your book." Wesley looks at her. He sees the tiredness in her eyes, the way her hands are cracked and dry from chemicals, the way she smiles even when there's nothing to smile about. "It's fine, Mom." But it's not fine, and they both know it. Lorraine Carter spends every day making herself invisible in rooms full of people who will never see her. And tonight, her son is supposed to do the same. Supposed to. The Hargrove Invitational, 8 p.m. The ballroom looks like something out of a magazine. Crystal chandeliers, a string quartet in the corner, waiters gliding between guests with silver trays. Men in tuxedos, women in gowns that cost more than a year of Lorraine's rent. And in the center of the room, on a raised platform under a spotlight, the chessboard. $200,000 of hand-carved ivory set up like a shrine. Hargrove opens the night with a speech. Charity, generosity, the importance of intellect. He uses the word meritocracy 3 times. Then he sits down for the exhibition match. His opponent, a local club player named David Stein. Stein is also a business associate. Stein's firm manages a chunk of Hargrove's real estate portfolio. The game lasts 19 moves. Stein plays like a man who wants to keep his biggest client happy. He makes 2 obvious mistakes, too obvious, and resigns with a gracious smile. Hargrove stands up, arms wide, soaking in applause like he just won the world championship. Then comes the moment. Hargrove grabs the microphone, face flushed, riding the high. "Ladies and gentlemen, I have an open challenge. $1 million to anyone in this room who can beat me tonight. Any taker?" He grins, scans the crowd. He knows no serious player is here without his invitation. This is a performance, a flex, nothing more. The crowd claps. Nobody steps forward. Hargrove nods, satisfied. Meanwhile, the service kitchen. Fluorescent lights, steel counters, the smell of leftover canapes. Wesley sits on a stool near the back door, his magnetic travel set open on his lap. He's replaying a Kasparov game from memory, move 37. A rook sacrifice that cracked open the entire position. The door swings open. Jonathan Hargrove, Richard's 20-year-old son, walks in looking for a drink. He's not like his father, quieter, softer around the edges. Home from college for the weekend. He spots Wesley and stops. "You play chess?" Wesley looks up, nods. Jonathan glances at the board. "That's Kasparov versus Topalov, 1999. Wesley raises an eyebrow. "You know it?"
My dad made me study it.
Jonathan shrugs. "I quit playing years ago. Got tired of being told I wasn't good enough." He pauses. "My dad just offered $1 million to anyone who can beat him. You should go out there." He says it half joking, the way rich kids say things when they don't understand what's at stake. Wesley closes the magnetic set. One piece is missing, the Black Queen, lost months ago. He never replaced it. He practices without it now. Every game, every session, no queen. Remember that. Lorraine appears in the doorway. She heard Jonathan. She shakes her head slowly. She knows what happens when they draw attention in this house. Nothing good. But Wesley is already standing, and in his head, a voice. Not his mother's, not Jonathan's. His grandfather's. "Don't ever let anyone make you small, Wes. You are not small." He walks toward the ballroom door. Lorraine whispers, "Wesley, don't." He pushes through, and the service kitchen door swings shut behind him. Wesley Carter didn't learn chess from a book. He learned it from a man the world forgot. Emmanuel Okafor, 71 years old, Nigerian, former national chess champion, 3-time winner of the Nigerian Chess Open in the 1980s. He came to America in 1994 with 2 suitcases and a rating of 2,350. By the time Wesley met him, Okafor was running a free after-school program at the Bridgeport Community Center. No funding, no sponsors, just a folding table, 6 plastic chairs, and a chess set with a missing rook that he replaced with a bottle cap. Wesley was 6. Lorraine's shift ran late. It always ran late. And the community center was the only place open. Wesley wandered in. Didn't talk to anyone, just stood by the table, watching Okafor play against himself. Okafor looked up. "You want to sit?" Wesley sat. "You know what this game is?" Wesley shook his head. Okafor placed a pawn in the center of the board. "This is the smallest piece. Everyone ignores it. But if it's brave enough to keep moving forward, it becomes the most powerful piece on the board." He smiled. "You remind me of this piece." That afternoon, Okafor taught Wesley how the pieces move, just the basics. Pawn goes forward. Knight jumps in an L shape. Bishop slides diagonal. Wesley didn't say much, but his eyes didn't leave the board. Not once. He came back the next day, and the next, and every day after that for 12 years. By age 8, Wesley was beating every kid in the program. By 10, he was beating adults who walked in off the street thinking they could teach the kid a lesson. By 12, Okafor entered him in his first rated tournament, the Connecticut Scholastic Open. Wesley won every game. 5 rounds, 5 wins, not a single draw. That night, Okafor gave him the Black Knight pin, pressed it into his palm, and said, "A knight moves like no other piece. Unexpected direction. That's you, Wesley. Don't ever forget it." Wesley pinned it to his backpack and never took it off. But Okafor's health was failing. Diabetes took his legs first, then his mobility. By the time Wesley was 13, Okafor was coaching from a wheelchair, pointing at squares with a wooden stick because his hands shook too much to move the pieces. He never complained. He just said, "My hands are retired. My mind is not." Now, Wesley's grandfather, Arthur Carter, Lorraine's father, a janitor who worked nights at a middle school for 31 years. He read philosophy books on his lunch break, Marcus Aurelius, Frederick Douglass, James Baldwin, not because anyone told him to, because he believed the mind was the one thing nobody could take from you. Arthur loved watching Wesley play. He didn't understand chess, not the tactics, not the openings, but he understood the look on his grandson's face when the pieces started moving. Focus. Purpose. Something bigger than a 6-year-old should carry. Arthur got sick when Wesley was 9. Lung cancer. The diagnosis came in March. He was gone by October. The last time Wesley saw him, hospital bed, machines beeping, Arthur's hand wrapped around Wesley's fingers like he was holding on to the whole world. Arthur whispered, "Don't ever let anyone make you small, Wes. You are not small." Wesley won his first open tournament 2 weeks after the funeral. He wrote on the back of his score sheet, "For Grandpa." He was 10 years old. Arthur's name was the first thing Wesley thought of every time he sat down at a board. Remember that name. It comes back. Now, the record nobody knows about. 147 consecutive wins. State Scholastic Championships, 3. Open tournaments against adults twice his age, undefeated. USCF rating, 2,280. National Master Level. For context, that puts an 18-year-old young man, the son of a housekeeper, above 99% of all rated chess players in America. But here's the thing nobody understands. Wesley didn't hide his talent because he was humble. He hid it because exposure was dangerous. He registered for every tournament under his initials, WC. If Hargrove or any of Lorraine's employers found out she was driving her son to weekend chess tournaments instead of picking up extra shifts, if they thought she was being irresponsible, she'd lose the job. And losing the job meant losing the apartment. Wesley's anonymity wasn't strategy. It was survival. Lorraine missed his biggest tournament, the Connecticut State Final, because she couldn't get the day off. Wesley called her from a payphone at the venue after he won. "I won, Mom!" Lorraine was on her knees, scrubbing a bathtub in someone else's house. She pressed the phone against her ear and whispered, "I know you did, baby." She didn't know the result. She didn't need to. She just believed him. That's the young man who just walked through the kitchen door into a ballroom full of people who never learned his name. A young man with a grandfather's promise in his chest, a missing queen in his travel set, and 147 wins behind him. And a billionaire who thinks this will be easy. Wesley stepped onto the platform. The room didn't go silent. It went something worse. It went amused. Whispers floated through the crowd like smoke. Is that the maid's kid? What is he doing up there? Oh, this should be entertaining. Hargrove was already seated, jacket unbuttoned, legs crossed, a glass of scotch on the table beside the board, not because he needed it, but because it looked good. He watched Wesley pull out the chair and sit down the way a cat watches a mouse walk into the open. "Ladies and gentlemen," Hargrove announced, loud enough for the back row, "it seems we have a challenger after all. Lorraine's boy wants to play." He turned to the crowd. "Let's be generous, shall we? Let's give him a moment he can tell his friends about." Applause. Polite. Condescending. The kind you give a kid at a talent show before they've even started. Elena Voss sat at the commentary table, microphone in front of her, a small monitor showing the board position. She'd been hired to provide expert color for the evening, a grandmaster lending credibility to Hargrove's vanity project. She watched Wesley sit down with no reaction on her face. Then her eyes dropped to his backpack, leaning against the leg of his chair. The black night pin. She tilted her head, picked up her phone, started typing something. Nobody noticed. All eyes were on the board. Hargrove played white. He opened with the Italian game, pawn to e4, knight to f3, bishop to c4. Classic. Textbook. The kind of opening you learn in your first month of chess. Here's the thing about the Italian game. It's like opening a conversation with a firm handshake. Solid, traditional, says, "I know what I'm doing," but doesn't say much else. It's safe. And safe was exactly what Hargrove wanted. Get in, crush the kid in 15 moves, take a bow. Wesley responded instantly, no hesitation. Knight to f6, the two knights defense. If Hargrove's opening was a handshake, Wesley's response was a shove. The two knights defense is aggressive. It says, "I'm not here to shake hands. I'm here to fight." Hargrove didn't notice the difference. He played his standard attack. Pawn push, bishop development, castling kingside. He was following a script. The same script he always followed. The same script that worked against David Stein 30 minutes ago. Wesley didn't follow any script. Move 6. Wesley pushed a pawn into the center and left it hanging, undefended. A free piece. Hargrove stared at it for about 4 seconds, then took it. Smiled. Looked at the crowd like, "See, the kid's giving away pieces already." But here's what Hargrove didn't understand. And here's where you need to pay attention. In chess, every piece has a value. A pawn is worth 1 point, a knight or bishop, 3, a rook, 5, a queen, 9. Wesley just gave up a pawn for free. 1 point. Gone. Hargrove won the material. But Wesley wasn't playing for material. He was playing for position. Think of it like this. Imagine a battlefield. Hargrove just picked up a single coin off the ground. While he was bending down to grab it, Wesley moved his soldiers to the top of every hill. He controlled the center of the board, the 4 most important squares, with his knights and pawns working together like a wall. Hargrove had an extra pawn. Wesley had the high ground. And in chess, the high ground wins wars. By move 8, something shifted. Wesley's pieces weren't just developed, they were coordinated. His 2 knights supported each other. His bishop cut a long diagonal across the board like a sniper. His rook was already connected, ready to swing into action. Every piece had a purpose. Every piece had a job. Hargrove's side of the board looked different. His pieces were scattered. A knight on the rim doing nothing. A bishop blocked by his own pawns. His rooks still sitting on their starting squares, disconnected. He'd been so focused on grabbing that free pawn that he forgot to build anything behind it. By move 10, Hargrove's smile was gone. He leaned forward, loosened his tie, just slightly, like he didn't want anyone to see. He stared at the board the way a man stares at a parking ticket, thinking there must be some mistake. There was no mistake. Elena Voss leaned toward her microphone. She'd been quiet until now, watching, calculating, running lines in her head. She spoke calmly, but every chess player in the room felt the weight of her words. Ladies and gentlemen, what we just witnessed is not a beginner's game. This young man executed a positional pawn sacrifice, deliberately giving up material to seize control of the center. This is a concept you see at Grand Master level preparation. This is not luck. This is theory. The room stirred. Champagne glasses lowered. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. A woman near the front put her hand over her mouth. Elena looked at her phone. The search results were loaded. She read them. Then she looked up at Wesley, at the black knight pin on his backpack, and the smallest smile crossed her face. She didn't say anything. Not yet. But she knew. And if you go back and rewatch this moment, if you look at Elena's face the second Wesley sat down at that board, you'll see it. She suspected from the pin alone. She just needed confirmation. Now she had it. And Hargrove? Hargrove still thought he was winning. Move 14. Hargrove's clock was ticking. Not just the chess clock, the clock inside his head. The one that tells a man who's never been wrong that something is very, very wrong. He tried to simplify. That's what amateurs do when the board gets too complicated. They trade pieces. Knight takes knight. Bishop takes bishop. Strip everything down until there's nothing left to be confused by. It's like turning down the volume when the music gets too loud. Fewer pieces, less danger. That was the plan. Wesley didn't let him. Every time Hargrove offered a trade, Wesley sidestepped it. Knight retreats to a better square instead of capturing. Bishop slides one diagonal over, refusing the exchange but opening a new threat. Rook shifts to a half-open file, not attacking anything yet, just watching. Waiting. Hargrove pushed a trade again on move 16. Wesley declined again. And again on move 18. And again on move 20. The board stayed full. The tension stayed high. And Hargrove was drowning in it. Here's what was happening in simple terms. Imagine you're in an argument with someone smarter than you. You want to change the subject. Make it simpler. Make it about something you can handle. But every time you try, they steer the conversation right back to the thing you can't answer. That's what Wesley was doing. Hargrove wanted a simple game. Wesley refused to give him one. Move 22. Wesley began building something. Slowly, quietly, the way you set a trap that doesn't look like a trap until it's too late. He moved a knight to the center of the board, a square called D5. From that single square, the knight controlled 8 other squares simultaneously. It couldn't be captured. Wesley had arranged his pawns to protect it perfectly. It just sat there, radiating power in every direction like a king on a throne. In chess, this is called an outpost, a piece that can't be removed, sitting in the heart of enemy territory, controlling everything around it. Hargrove couldn't take it, couldn't push it away, couldn't ignore it. It was like a rock in the middle of a river. Everything had to flow around it. And here's the part that matters. Remember what Mr. Okafor said about the knight? A knight moves like no other piece. Unexpected direction. That's you, Wesley. That knight on D5 wasn't just a chess piece. It was Wesley. Planted in a place nobody expected, impossible to move, controlling everything. Hargrove stared at the board for nearly 2 minutes, the longest pause of the night. His fingers hovered over pieces and pulled back, hovered and pulled back. He was looking for a plan. Any plan. He found one, or thought he did. Move 25. Hargrove sacrificed his bishop, just gave it up, crashed it into Wesley's pawn structure to rip open a line toward Wesley's king. It was desperate, aggressive, the kind of move a man makes when he's not trying to win anymore. He's trying to survive. If he could get his rook to Wesley's back rank, maybe, just maybe, he could create enough chaos to swindle a draw. The crowd gasped. For a moment, it looked dangerous. A bishop sacrifice always looks dramatic, pieces flying, lines opening. It felt like Hargrove had finally found his punch. Wesley took 30 seconds, the longest he'd paused all game. He sat perfectly still, hands in his lap, eyes scanning the board. Not one piece, not one square, but the whole thing, the whole picture. Then he moved his rook. 1 square, just one, to the back rank. That single move did 2 things at once. First, it blocked Hargrove's attack completely. The rook sat on the exact square Hargrove needed to deliver his threat. Door closed. Second, it opened a diagonal for Wesley's bishop, creating a new attack aimed directly at Hargrove's king from the other side of the board. 1 move, 2 problems solved, 1 new problem created for Hargrove. This is the difference between a player who memorizes moves and a player who sees the board. Hargrove attacked with force. Wesley responded with precision. Force is loud. Precision is quiet. And precision wins. Hargrove leaned back in his chair. For the first time all night, he didn't look angry. He looked confused. Genuinely confused. Like a man who walked into his own house and found the furniture rearranged. Now, this is the moment you need to see. Not on the board. Off the board. Lorraine Carter was standing at the edge of the ballroom. She'd followed Wesley out of the kitchen. She didn't walk to the front. She stayed near the back, half hidden behind a marble column, hands clasped in front of her, watching from the shadows the way she'd spent her whole life watching, from the edges, from the places where nobody notices you. She didn't understand the moves. She didn't know what an outpost was, or why the rook mattered, or what a pawn sacrifice meant. But she understood faces. And every single face in that room, every billionaire, every guest, every tuxedo and evening gown, was staring at her son. Not laughing, not smirking. Staring. The way you stare at something you can't explain. A woman standing near Lorraine, diamond earrings, champagne in hand, leaned over and whispered, "Is that your son?" Lorraine nodded. Barely. "He's extraordinary." Lorraine's eyes filled. She didn't wipe them. She just stood there, hands clasped so tight her knuckles went pale, watching her son sit at a table where she'd spent years not being allowed to sit, and own it. This woman, who enters through the service door, who removes her shoes so she doesn't mark the floor, who has never once been asked her last name in this house, was watching her son make a billionaire sweat. And for the first time in a very long time, Lorraine Carter was not invisible. Elena Voss had seen enough. She'd been quiet for the last 10 moves, watching, calculating, letting the board speak for itself. But now she picked up the microphone. Not rushed, not dramatic. The way a doctor delivers a diagnosis. Calm, factual, and irreversible. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to share something with you. The room turned to her. The young man sitting across from Mr. Hargrove is Wesley Carter. He is currently rated 2,280 by the United States Chess Federation. That's national master level. He has not lost a single rated game in 4 years. 147 consecutive wins. He has won 3 Connecticut State Scholastic Championships. He is, by every measure I know, one of the strongest young players in this country. She paused. Let it land. He is 18 years old, and he is the son of the woman who cleans this house. Silence. Not the polite kind, the kind that punches you in the stomach. Then, murmuring. Low at first, like a wave building offshore. Heads turning, mouths opening. A man near the bar set his drink down and said, "Wait. What?" A woman pulled out her phone and started recording. Another one followed. Then 3 more. Hargrove heard every word. His jaw tightened. His eyes flicked from Elena to the crowd to the board and back. And there it was. Not just embarrassment. Something uglier. The specific fury of a man who built his entire identity around being the smartest person in every room. Now realizing that a young man he called a stray was dismantling him on a stage he built for himself. He wasn't losing a chess game. He was losing the story he told himself about who he was. The room was shifting. You could feel it, like the temperature changed. Guests who had laughed when Wesley sat down were now leaning forward with their hands over their mouths. A couple near the front exchanged a look that said, "Are you seeing this?" People weren't watching a curiosity anymore. They were watching something real. Jonathan Hargrove stood near the back wall, arms crossed, watching his father. He didn't look surprised. He looked relieved. Like something he'd always known but couldn't prove was finally being shown to the world. A man in a gray suit, one of Hargrove's business partners, leaned over to the woman beside him and whispered, loud enough for 3 people to hear, "He's been playing the maid's son this whole time. And losing." Lorraine heard that. She didn't react, but she stood a little straighter. The social geometry of the room had flipped. 10 minutes ago, Wesley was the entertainment, the maid's kid who wandered in over his head. Now Hargrove was the one exposed, the man who bet $1 million, insulted a young man in front of 100 witnesses, and was now losing to that same young man on a board he couldn't blame anyone else for. Hargrove felt it. The eyes, the phones, the silence between moves that used to feel like respect and now felt like a courtroom. He snapped. Not loud, tight, through his teeth. "It's 1 game. 1 game. Everybody sit down." But nobody sat down. In fact, more people stood up. And somewhere across the board, Wesley moved another piece. Quiet. Calm. Like he'd been here before. Because he had. 147 times. Move 31. Hargrove had 7 pieces left on the board. Wesley had 9. But numbers didn't tell the story. Position told the story. And Wesley's position was a noose. Hargrove's king was trapped in the corner, boxed in by his own pawns, hiding behind a wall he'd built for safety that had now become a cage. His rook sat on an open file doing nothing because every square it could move to was controlled by Wesley. His remaining knight was stuck on the edge of the board, what chess players call a knight on the rim is grim. Every piece Hargrove had was either frozen, blocked, or useless. Wesley's side of the board was the opposite. His rook controlled the only open file. His bishop owned the longest diagonal. His knight, still sitting on d5, hadn't moved in 11 turns, and didn't need to. It just sat there, locking down everything. But the real threat wasn't any of those pieces. The real threat was a pawn. A single pawn on the 6th rank, 2 squares away from the end of the board. 2 squares away from becoming a queen. Wesley had been pushing it forward for 15 moves. Quietly, 1 square at a time, while Hargrove was busy worrying about knights and bishops and rook attacks, this little pawn, the smallest piece on the board, worth exactly 1 point, had marched almost the entire length of the battlefield without being noticed. Here's where it all came together. Wesley moved his rook to Hargrove's back rank, directly threatening the queen. Hargrove now had 2 choices: move the queen and lose his rook, or keep the queen where it was and watch Wesley's pawn reach the 8th rank. In chess, when a pawn reaches the other end of the board, it transforms. It becomes any piece you want. And 99 times out of 100, you choose a queen, the most powerful piece in the game, worth 9 points, created from 1. Hargrove moved his queen. He had to. Wesley captured the rook. Then Wesley pushed the pawn. 1 more square. 7th rank, 1 square away. Hargrove threw everything he had left. Queen to f7. Check. Trying to force a trade, a distraction, anything, Wesley blocked with his bishop. Calm. Simple. And then, the final move. Pawn to the 8th rank. Promotion. A new queen appeared on the board, and it arrived with check, attacking Hargrove's king directly, while simultaneously cutting off every escape route. Remember, Wesley practiced at home with a travel set missing its queen, every day, every morning at that kitchen table. He'd spent years learning how to win without the most powerful piece on the board, so when the moment came to create one from nothing, from a single pawn that everyone else would have ignored, he didn't hesitate. He'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. Wesley didn't stand up, didn't raise his voice. He just looked at the board, then at Hargrove, and said quietly, "Checkmate in 3. Hargrove didn't move. His hand hovered over a piece, then pulled back. He ran the lines in his head. 1, 2, 3. Every variation ended the same way. He was lost. The room held its breath. Then, one person clapped. Elena Voss. Standing. Slow, deliberate applause. Then another person joined. Then 5. Then the entire room erupted. Not polite golf claps, not charity gala courtesy. Real, thundering applause from people who had just witnessed something they would never forget. Wesley stood up from the table. He didn't look at Hargrove. He didn't look at the crowd. He didn't look at the check for $1 million still sitting on the table. He looked across the room, at his mother. Lorraine was crying. Not dramatic, cinematic crying. Just tears running down her face, one hand pressed over her mouth, the other gripping the marble column she'd been hiding behind. Wesley walked to her, through the crowd, past the champagne, past the tuxedos, past every person who had never once asked his name. She grabbed him, held him. He was taller than her now, had been for years, towering over her by a full head. In that room full of billionaires and evening gowns, the most powerful image wasn't the checkmate. It wasn't the $1 million check. It was a mother holding her son, in a house where she'd spent years being no one, while the whole world finally saw what she always knew. The applause faded. The room was still buzzing. Phones out, people whispering, a few guests already texting friends who weren't there. But one person wasn't clapping. One person wasn't whispering. One person was standing at the chess table with a face the color of old cement. Richard Hargrove III. He didn't shake Wesley's hand. He didn't nod. He didn't do any of the things a man is supposed to do when he loses with dignity. Instead, he stood up so fast his chair scraped the platform, and he pointed, not at Wesley, but at Lorraine. "You planned this." The room went cold. "You brought him here on purpose. This was a setup. You used my own house, my own event, to humiliate me." Lorraine opened her mouth, but nothing came out. 30 years of swallowing words will do that to a person. She just stood there, holding Wesley, shaking her head slowly. Hargrove turned to the crowd, arms wide, performing outrage like a man who's spent his whole life turning accusations into applause. "Do you see what happened here? I open my home. I offer a generous challenge, and the help rigs the game." Silence. But a different kind now. Not the silence of a room that agrees. The silence of a room that's watching a man dig his own grave and deciding whether to hand him a bigger shovel. Elena Voss picked up her microphone. She didn't stand, didn't raise her voice. She spoke the way grandmasters play, precise, unhurried, every word exactly where it needed to be. "Mr. Hargrove, no one planned anything." He turned to her. "You made a public challenge. A player in this room accepted. The game was played on your board, under your rules, in your house, in front of your guests. There was no setup. There was no trick." She paused. "The only surprise here is that you assumed the smartest person in this room couldn't possibly be the one you never bothered to look at." The room exhaled. A few people nodded. Someone in the back said, "She's right," loud enough for 20 people to hear. Hargrove's mouth opened, closed, opened again. He looked like a fish pulled out of water, gasping for a comeback that wasn't coming. Wesley stepped forward, not toward Hargrove, just forward, enough to be heard. His voice was steady, quiet. The same voice that said, "Your move 2 hours ago." "You said something earlier tonight, Mr. Hargrove. You said chess is the ultimate proof of intelligence. You can't fake it." Wesley looked at the board, the pieces still frozen in their final position. "Those were your words, not mine." He paused. "You were right. You can't fake it." That was it. No shouting, no victory speech, no dramatic takedown. Just an 18-year-old young man holding up a mirror and letting a billionaire see his own reflection. And the reflection was ugly. Hargrove didn't respond. There was nothing to respond with. His own words, his own challenge, his own board, his own rules. Every weapon he'd built had been turned back on him by a young man who weighed 160 pounds and still had a few weeks left until graduation. He straightened his jacket, looked around the room one more time, searching for allies, for sympathetic faces, for anyone who still saw the world the way he did. He found none. He walked off the platform, through a side door, gone. The ballroom buzzed. People were already replaying what they'd just seen, not the chess, but the confrontation. Elena's words, Wesley's words, Hargrove's collapse. 6 phones had been recording, 6 different angles of the same unraveling. The video was online before Lorraine and Wesley reached their car. By morning, it had 2 million views. By Wednesday, it had 8 million. By the end of the week, 14 million. The comment sections were a wildfire. Hashtag Justice for Wesley started trending by Thursday afternoon. And then something happened that nobody expected. Jonathan Hargrove, Richard's own son, posted a video. No script, no publicist, just a 20-year-old college student sitting in his dorm room looking at the camera with red eyes. What my father did was wrong. What he said was wrong. Wesley Carter deserved better. His mother deserved better. And I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner. That video got 9 million views in 48 hours. And Richard Hargrove III, the man who said chess was proof of intelligence, suddenly couldn't outsmart the internet, his own guests, or his own son. 2 weeks after that night, Wesley Carter's life looked nothing like it did before. The first call came from the Whitmore Academy, one of the top preparatory schools on the East Coast. But Wesley was 18, about to graduate. So the offer came in a different form, a full college scholarship. Tuition, room, board, books, everything. Their chess program was nationally ranked, and they'd been watching Wesley's tournament results for over a year. They just didn't know who WC was. Now they did. The second call came from a chess equipment company. Not a big sponsorship deal, just a woman on the phone who said, "We saw the video. We'd like to send Wesley a proper chess set, a complete one." Wesley opened the box on the kitchen table. 32 pieces, including a queen. He held it in his hand for a long time. The piece he'd played without for over a year. The piece he'd learned to win without. Now here it was, solid, weighted, real. He set it on the board in the correct square. Then he looked at his magnetic travel set, the one with the missing queen, and left it exactly the way it was. Some things you don't fix. Some things you keep as reminders. 3 universities reached out. Formal offers this time. Full rides, campus visits, coaching introductions. The kind of doors that don't open for kids from Bridgeport. The kind of doors that had just been blown off their hinges. Now, the $1 million. Hargrove's lawyers moved fast. Within 72 hours, they released a statement calling the bet a social gesture made in the spirit of entertainment and not a legally binding wager. Translation: he didn't want to pay. But 14 million people watched him slam that check on the table. 14 million people heard the words come out of his mouth. Every legal analyst on television said the same thing. Verbal contract, public witnesses, recorded on video. His publicist made the call. Settle, quietly, make it go away. But Wesley didn't want it to go away quietly. He sat with Lorraine at the kitchen table, the same table where he'd studied chess puzzles every morning since he was 6, and told her what he wanted. "I don't want it for us, Mom." Lorraine looked at him. "I want to name it after Grandpa." The Arthur Carter Chess Initiative. $1 million. Endowed to fund chess programs in underfunded public schools across Connecticut. Free equipment, free coaching, free tournament entry. Every dollar aimed at kids who looked like Wesley. Kids with talent and no access. Kids playing on magnetic sets with missing pieces. Kids whose mothers worked 3 jobs and still couldn't afford a $20 entry fee. Wesley didn't keep a cent. Lorraine tried to argue. Wesley said, "Grandpa didn't leave us money. He left us something better. I want to pass that on." Lorraine stopped arguing. The initiative launched in 11 schools in the first year. 63 kids signed up in the first month. By the end of the year, 2 of them had qualified for their first rated tournaments. One of them, a 7-year-old girl named Maya, walked up to Wesley after a Tuesday coaching session and asked, Were you always good at this? Wesley laughed. The kind of real, unguarded laugh that people who carry too much rarely let out. No, I was just stubborn. Maya nodded like that made perfect sense, went back to her board, played a move Wesley hadn't taught her. He smiled. Okafor would have liked that. Now, Hargrove. Richard Hargrove III was not destroyed. That's important to say. This isn't a story where the villain gets arrested or goes bankrupt. Real life doesn't work like that. But Hargrove was diminished, and for a man who measured everything by status, diminished was worse than destroyed. He stepped down from 2 charity boards within a month. The Hargrove Invitational was not held the following year. No announcement, no explanation. The website just went dark. A profile piece in the New York Times revisited how he treated his household staff. 3 former employees went on record. The details were small. No single one was a scandal. But together, they painted a portrait of a man who saw the people around him as furniture. The ivory chess set, $200,000, went into storage. A guest from the gala told a reporter, "I don't think he can look at a chessboard anymore without seeing that young man's face." 1 year later, Wesley Carter, 19, competed in the United States Junior Championship. He didn't win. He finished 3rd. Lost 2 games, one to a 21-year-old from New York, one to a 20-year-old from Texas who played the most aggressive Sicilian defense Wesley had ever faced. He cried after the Texas game, sat in a hallway outside the playing hall, head in his hands. Lorraine sat next to him, didn't say anything, just put her hand on his back. The next morning, Wesley walked back into the playing hall and won his final game in 26 moves. This isn't a fairy tale where Wesley never loses again. He lost. He'll lose more. But he came back the next morning and played. That's the part they don't put in movie montages. The boring, unglamorous willingness to lose and return. He still visits Mr. Okafor every Saturday. Okafor can't play anymore. Hands shake too badly to move the pieces. But he watches Wesley's games on a tablet, following along move by move. And he still catches mistakes. "Move 23, he says, tapping the screen with a trembling finger. "You rushed. You know better." Lorraine no longer works for the Hargrove family. She has a new job, school administrative assistant, regular hours, benefits, weekends off. She still straightens Wesley's collar before every tournament. Some things don't change. Some things shouldn't. And now, I need to talk to you directly. Wesley Carter isn't real. But the young man sitting in a classroom right now with a talent no one's noticed, the mother working 2 jobs hoping someone will finally see her child, they are real. They're out there right now, and they don't need someone to save them. They just need someone to stop looking away. If this story moved you, subscribe. We tell stories like this every week. Hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And before you go, one question. Who was the first person who saw something in you that nobody else did? The teacher, the coach, the grandparent, the stranger who said one sentence at the right time. Drop their name in the comments. Let them be seen too. Because everybody deserves to be seen. #Justice for Wesley.
So Wesley Carter won $1 million from the man his mother cleans toilet for, and he didn't keep a single cent. He named it after his grandfather, Arthur Carter, a janitor who read philosophy on his lunch break. That money now fund free chess program in 11 public schools. 63 kids sign up the first month. kids with borrowed sets and missing pieces that like Wesley. But here's what I keep coming back to. Richard Hargrove spent his whole life buying proof that he was smart. Trophy ivory that says a re-exhibition match. Wesley spent 12 years at the kitchen table with a broken clock and a set missing its screen. One of them built an image, the other one built something real. And when they finally sat across from each other, the truth didn't need an introduction. So let me ask you this. How many people in your life are you not really seeing? And how many people in your life are not really seeing you? Who was the first person who looked at you, really looked, and saw something no one else did? Drop their name in the comments. Let them be seen too. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe. We tell stories like this every week. And the next one is gonna make you rethink everything you thought you knew about forgiveness. Because everybody deserves to be seen.